Hey Boat Dragons, I'm glad you joined me today. AI, or artificial intelligence, has become a real buzzword in our society lately. Every major tech company is getting into the AI game and releasing tools that are based off of different models to assist humans in our pursuit of many different things, whether it be creativity or learning or various different applications, right? And so I wanted to explore where AI is and where it is going. And I wanted to explore that from the perspective of science fiction books that have treaded those waters for us already and given us a picture of what AI may or may not look like. And so I hope you'll stick around with me today and explore this very interesting topic. It's interesting to me anyway, especially because we are at the point in our society right now where AI is really on the cutting edge, and I don't think it's going away. But the question will be how we approach it, right? And so at the end of this video, I will tackle some of those questions that pertain specifically to creators and our approach to AI. But first of all, let's explore some books. And I've got 4 books on the docket for you today. The first of those books is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Also known as Blade Runner because that's what the movie was based on. This is a really fascinating look at artificial intelligence. Now, the AIs in this book are androids, and based on a lot of what I hear in articles I've read and things like that, that's eventually where we are going to go. I have no doubt about it. So the AIs in this book are androids. It is set in a future world where companies have created androids for the betterment of human society, but some androids have gone rogue, and so bounty hunters are hired specifically for the purpose of deactivating and destroying these rogue androids. And as the story progresses, whether you read the book or seen the movie or both, you're probably aware that it explores the question of when do androids become sentient? When do androids become human? And so the title is a little bit quirky, right? Do androids dream of electric sheep? But the question is asked right there in the title because humans dream. And so as these characters interact with the android world, they begin to wonder, okay, how different are they from you and I? At what point do we consider them human and worthy of continuing to exist? And I think the author really explores this quite well. I think the movies personally do a little bit better job of it, but the author does explore that to an extent, and I think it's done well. We are going to have to answer that question, I think, in the near future. Whatever happens with the current state of artificial intelligence, you have to know that at some point they are going to put that into a body of some sorts that they have created and make a moving, thinking artificial intelligence. It's bound to happen. I read articles that talk about artificial skin that is currently being developed so that these robots that they are planning to make can look more human. It's just a matter of time, guys, and it's a scary thought, right? It's a scary thought that one day we may not be able to tell humans apart from androids other than certain key characteristics, because we're kind of assuming that they will be different from us. But what if they're not? At what point do we consider androids to have a soul, for lack of a better terminology? It's that age-old question of when is something considered to have a soul and to be human and to no longer be thought of as a thing but as an actual person. So I highly recommend this book to anyone who wants to explore that question and see how this particular society of future humans handled it. It is done in a little bit of a quirky way, but I think it's worth exploring through this story. Okay, so we're going to move on from there, and we're going to move on to the Robot series by Isaac Asimov. Now, I have only read I, Robot, just for full disclosure here. I have not read the entire Robot series, but I know about the 3 laws and everything like that. I appreciate that exploration of having parameters set in place so that artificial intelligence does not get out of control. And I'm going to read those 3 laws for you. The first one is, a robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. So they can't hurt a human being, and they can't not act if they know a human is going to be harmed. The second law is, a robot must obey orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And the final one is, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So if a robot is being threatened with destruction, and it would involve defending themselves against a human if that human is going to come to harm, they can't act. It would seem that these are pretty final. There's probably always loopholes and wiggle room. The movie I, Robot kind of explores this. That movie is very loosely based on the ideas that Asimov put forward. But it does explore one scenario where a robot might act outside the 3 laws, or seem to act outside the 3 laws. So it's a really interesting question, and I think it's important to put things like this in place, to have guidelines and parameters of what the AI can do and what it cannot do. I think that's really important. And I've read articles that have talked about scientists and researchers who are working with the 3 laws that Asimov put forward as a basis for creating whatever the future of artificial intelligence is. So this is something that is jumping from science fiction into reality, and that's a very interesting journey that I'm anxious to watch and see where it goes. And I think there is value in having a little bit of a sense of trepidation about what that future looks like, but also an acceptance that that future is not going to go away. It's going to happen in some way, shape, or form. And there will be things that we will be willing to embrace, and there will be things that we will not be willing to embrace. But at least if we have some parameters in place, like Asimov put forward in his Robot series, at least that will hopefully deter any unfortunate consequences that might come from a world where artificial intelligence is in the mainstream. But the reality is, with this being such unexplored territory, we just don't know. But I found it really interesting exploring the ideas behind the 3 laws that Asimov put forward. And I think it's definitely worth looking more into. And I highly recommend reading I, Robot. I highly recommend reading the rest of the Robot series, which I do plan to do at some point. And there's a little bit of that in Foundation as well, but not so much. The main thing with Foundation is there is an artificial intelligence that is based on the person of Harry Seldon, and so it's basically a copy of Harry Seldon, but it lives on as if he were living on, even though he dies at some point. And so it really rides that fence in a dangerous way, I think. So what are your thoughts on that and the 3 laws and just Asimov's ideas in general? I'd love to talk with you in the comments. So the third book that I want to explore, well, I guess that would be the 4th book because I talked about Foundation as well, The third book I want to explore is Scythe, and the Scythe trilogy as a whole. This I have labeled as a utopian sci-fi novel, or at least quasi-utopian. Most people would say, oh, it fits in the realm of dystopian because it fits in with all the Hunger Games and everything like that. And yeah, it's kind of that same genre. It's still kind of that young adult dystopian genre, but this presents more of a utopia, so that's why I called it that. And this is a world where things like death and war and famine have been completely eradicated because of technological advances that have come as a result of the existence of a true sentient AI known as the Thunderhead. And this is a cloud AI that pretty much rules over the entire world. But it's pretty clear throughout the series that this AI operates under the very best of intentions to serve the people that created it and make a better world for them. And when I was reading this series and I did video reviews about it, I talked about how I would love to live in this world. I really would, because this is a world where everything, for the most part, is perfect. And any imperfections that are in this world is a direct result of humans. And that's to be expected, right? We're flawed, and supposedly we create flawed things, but the AI in this book is not really presented as flawed, with certain exceptions. There are certain things that it can't see that are going on behind the scenes, and if it did see them, things would be very, very different. But because everything has been changed for the better, there's no more death, things like that, there are scythes that have to go around and select people for gleaning, and that basically means they can kill them and those people won't be revived, because pretty much everyone else who dies in this world, because they do die, but they're immediately brought back to life at a revival center by these robots that are controlled by the AI. It's just a fascinating world. It really is. And I highly recommend reading these books to give you a different perspective on AI. And it's just a fun story anyway, in my opinion. I love it. But it explores a very different side of artificial intelligence. And I don't think it's a side that's unwarranted either. I think there can be definite pros and cons. I think that there is a slight possibility that, given the right parameters, an artificial intelligence could solve the problems of the world. Not all of them. I don't think so. This AI solved pretty much all of the problems of the world. I don't think that that is necessarily possible. I could be wrong. And I am a futurist, so I believe in a hope for the future that is better than what we have it now. And a lot of that, I think, can be due to technology. I just don't know if the perfect world, as presented in here, necessarily exists. Because even as you read these books, this world is not totally perfect. But it's almost perfect, in a sense. So, really great story to explore. I highly recommend it. And it makes me very curious to see what good things AI will bring about. So, let's move on from there to the final book I want to talk about, and that is the Bobaverse. And if you have not read the Bobaverse books, you are sorely missing out. They're a lot of fun. It's nerdy satire at its best. It's a science fiction series where the main character sells his company, takes the money, invests in cryogenics for himself, and then, ironically, is immediately killed. And then he wakes up later with his mind having been transferred into a computer module that is eventually transferred into a spaceship. And it all goes from there. It's a lot of fun, and that is one of those instances where someone's mind, kind of like we were talking about with Harry Seldon, everything that he is or was and potentially could be has been transferred into this artificial form that still looks like him and talks like him, thinks like him, so that intellectual component is there. But then as the series goes along, we discover that they are working on creating a true AI, because the AI that is Bob or the AI that is Harry Seldon is ultimately still just a replicant, right? It's just a replication of somebody who already existed, but they want to create a true AI. Book 5 of the Bobiverse really starts to explore the true AI in depth. And I'm not going to go into spoilers, but I will say that it presents a very dark future for a world that creates a true AI. So it still takes that hard line of what if artificial intelligence goes wrong. And that's not wrong to explore, because the potential for things going haywire is there. It's right there in our faces. And, we explore that in movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Dave tells the AI to rotate the pod. Rotate the pod, please, Hal. I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave. And, that the AI takes over. So it's a stark reality that we have to be aware of. We have to be conscious of. We have to be very careful in our exploration of artificial intelligence. And there will be some people that are more cautious than others. Like, I'm a very cautious person when it comes to that. I don't like a lot of risk. Even though I am a futurist, I'm a cautious futurist. Not all futurists are like that. And so it remains to be seen what actually happens. And we're just on the cusp of that right now. We're at the beginning points of science fiction, like this and other books that I talked about here today, becoming reality. It's at the point right now where things like ChatGPT is in the mainstream, and other companies are working on their own artificial intelligence modules and bots that can tell you things or help you with your searches or create art for you. And I think that's really where it becomes problematic, because creativity is solely the purview of human beings. What happens when an artificial intelligence creates? Is it creating based on what it knows how to do? Or is it creating based on what other people have already created and just making an amalgam of that, or a shadow of what that creation was? And I think that line is going to become blurrier as the decades go by, because at some point it may happen where a true AI emerges that can create and can think for itself and can make art. Will that happen? I don't know. It may. And that's what science fiction really is. Science fiction is the exploration of the possible becoming probable. It's that weird gray area where we just don't know what's going to happen until we explore it, and we may end up wishing we had not explored it, but then again we may also be happy that we did. It's a very fine line. So you may be wondering where Chaz stands on AI art and AI writing and books and things like that. And I will say emphatically, I do not endorse AI art at all. I was very, very clear with my artist when I went to do my book that I needed to know where she stood on artificial intelligence, because if any of my book cover was designed by AI, I cannot do it. Luckily, she was of the same mindset, and she designs the book covers herself and everything like that. Now, is it okay to use AI for idea generation and exploring different possibilities? I think so, yes. But when it becomes the final creation and it's used to make that final creation, That's where I personally draw the line. Same with writing. I did not write my books with AI. Everything that is in my personal books came from right here. Everything in my head. You can't really match the human imagination and the human penchant for creativity. But what if that changes? What if one day that changes and an AI is created that can think and reason and create? Will it happen? I don't know. I'd like to think no, because humans are unique in that. But then you have to wonder, if that does happen, has that artificial intelligence become human? It's a hard question, and it's one I don't have the answer to. But I enjoy exploring it, and I enjoy exploring it in books, the gray areas, the positives, the negatives in a world like the Bobiverse. There's so many different ways to explore this question. I think we just don't know enough yet to really see where this is going. I think it's very problematic right now. I think authors and artists need to stay far away from it. That's my personal opinion. You may feel differently. I know recently there was a statement made by NaNoWriMo that they would allow AI writing. But then they kind of went back on that and said, here's a clarifying statement. So it's something that has become reality, and it's something that we need to deal with. And I don't know what the future looks like for that. But as of right now, I am definitely saying I do not think that AI art and writing is legitimate. But if there were parameters put around it for the future where everything had to be disclosed and you had to give credit to the robot versus credit to the person that is claiming to do the writing with the robot, and if we give credit to the robot, are we making them human? Are we calling them human? I don't know. I really don't, guys. I don't have the answers. I have a lot of questions. I have more questions than I think I really want the answers to. And so I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been fun for me to talk about. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of science fiction becoming reality in this sense? And what is that going to look like? What's your opinion of what that's going to look like? And are you as clueless as I am? Let me know that in the comments too. Until next time, guys, make sure you read more books, and I will talk to you soon. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me.